this other gentleman reporting he's with?
SNC.
Okay,
Okay, folks, can we be quiet, please? I'd like to introduce our second candidate of the day, Mike McGinn, who will give an opening statement and then be followed by the same panelists, the same questions you heard before. By the way, this is being taped, so it will be available on the Seattle Fair Growth site as well as the Seattle Neighborhood Coalition site. And here we go, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it on?
It is on. 2
Okay,
minutes.
great. Mike McGinn, I'm running for mayor of Seattle. Not on.
Push it.
On the left.
Well, basically.
Need some tech help. Okay. Whoa. Okay. That good? Okay. Mike McGinn, I'm running for mayor of Seattle. And as you all know, I've held the job before. And it was a hell of a job. It was a hell of a ride. I came into office during the recession. Unemployment was 9.5%. We had to make something like $67 million in budget cuts in our first year. And we did so, and that was a challenge. And our challenge then was how would we get more jobs? That worked. We had the jobs. In fact, we have so many jobs now. The challenge is how do we deal with the impacts of growth? And one of the things that was motivating me to get into the race was just watching the way our city government was being managed, because the growth was bringing with it a tremendous rise in revenues. You know, $250 million more a year is what the general fund has grown to. It was relatively flat during my 4 years. Towards the end of the 4 years, we started having a little more money. But that's a 25% increase over 3 years, 250 million more. Yet we always heard from City Hall that they didn't have money to take care of essential needs, like taking care of our parks and open spaces and community centers, nor that we didn't have the resources for taking care of those that were in need. So that concerned me. And then the answer to every problem from City Hall was a new regressive tax. And in fact, at the last State of the City speech, just two big new taxes were announced as well as being the solution. So I've been thinking about the race, and that was what motivated me to get in, because what we're doing is we're squeezing people out of Seattle. On the one side, you have rising rents and home prices, which are being driven by the tremendous growth in jobs in the city and the demand for people to come here, and other reasons too. Once a place becomes hot economically like that, I do believe capital starts flowing in from other places as well to drive the market. And so that's on the one side, and then on the other side, it's more regressive taxes. So if you wanted to drive people out of town, this is how you do it, right? If you wanted to design a system to drive middle class and lower income people out of town, this is exactly how you do it. So what do I want to do? One, we need to thoroughly review the budget, cut unneeded spending, redirect it to our priorities. That's, I believe, in social services, taking care of those in need, as well as making sure that every neighborhood gets equitable funding. And again, based on my experience, I believe that's something I can do. I believe I could get 30 to 40 million in the first year out of that budget. To the extent we need dollars for new initiatives, I think instead of looking to property taxes or sales taxes, I would hold the line on that. We would look to ask the big corporations to pay. We actually have the tools to do that already, and we can talk more about that, but we don't have the political will to use them. And we need to re-engage with communities. As a community council president for years, I believe that you have to listen to communities to make policy. I believe we've become too disconnected. We're not always going to agree on the end of the day, but at the very first, you have to allow every community at the table to have their say. Thank you.
Good job, right on time. All right, our first panelist, Irene Wall of the City Neighborhood Coalition, Council, excuse me.
Go ahead, take that sip of water.
You go ahead, Irene, I'm ready.
You can be listening.
I listen to everyone. Irene and I go back a little bit.
This is an easy one for you, Mike. Seattle was heralded for its innovation in citizen-led neighborhood planning in the 90s. Since then, neighborhood planning has drifted away from a comprehensive and grassroots effort to a staff-driven effort with a limited focus on upzoning to accommodate growth. Do you believe that current residents in Seattle's diverse neighborhoods should have more say, and I should say, when I say more, tell me how much more, in land use and zoning in their neighborhoods?
Yeah. And actually, that's where Irene and I go back. I think I met Irene when I was in Greenwood and got involved in the neighborhood planning on Michelle. And one of the things that has disturbed me about the Hollow process was one that was top-down, you know, that the recommendations, and I think the people there were in good faith trying to figure out what are the right answers, but all of the process since then, you know, hasn't really changed that analysis at the front end that was done from the top. I think, and the other piece of it was you didn't ask neighborhoods at the same time, what do you need to preserve your quality of life? What are the things you want in your neighborhood? Because I think most people understand the city's going to grow. When you're adding this many jobs, we have to figure out how we're going to accommodate that with housing. But they want to see that the public, you know, that the elected officials are listening on things like what are the parks and open space? What's the transit and how are we going to deal with that? What's the walkability, small businesses, your public safety? You know, and I look back, for example, at, you know, when we were involved in neighborhood planning, you know, Ballard had a new library and a new park next to them. That was what they asked for in neighborhood planning. That wouldn't have happened without it. In Finney Ridge, the pocket parks by where the Starbucks is, where Greenwood and Finney take that curve. So, when I was mayor, we did our first year, now we're getting into the weeds. Our first year we did the comprehensive neighborhood planning at Bitter Lake, at the north, and Rainier Beach at the south. And what we decided after that was what we wanted to do was more focused neighborhood planning, where you went into a specific space, but we did try to make it bottom up and listen to people what they want, in addition to talking about zoning. So I think both of those things have to change, and you have to give neighborhoods a voice, and people that live in neighborhoods a voice in how change occurs.
As you know, the comp plan incorporates the goals and policies out of those 37 neighborhood plans.
Yeah.
And we're about to, there's been an invitation, you know, there's a number of comp plan amendments in the annual process on the table, and more coming that are being created in City Hall that haven't been revealed yet. But they will touch on the neighborhood plan goals and policies. Do you believe that if there's a competition or a conflict between a policy and a neighborhood plan and a comprehensive plan policy, which one should take precedence and why?
Okay.
Time's up. I'll give you a couple seconds.
Okay. I may not be interpreting your question properly, but I think you have both. There's always a conflict between what are your citywide or regional or statewide goals and neighborhood goals. And I think that challenge always has to be worked out. So that's why I think you have to listen to neighborhoods and as they articulate their priorities, but at the same time, you know, we're all part of a larger system and we have to recognize that there are larger goals as well. So I don't know if I'm getting at your question, but both.
As a politician would.
No, but I'm just because it was so finely detailed, but I'm just going to go up high and just say, there are citywide goals. When you make big investments in a neighborhood and transit, for example, I do believe you have to figure out how to get some more housing near that transit, because the whole region's paying for it. So there's always a conflict between neighborhood goals, city goals, regional goals, and state goals. You have to navigate through the political process.
Thanks. Stephanie?
I should have said always, there's often a conflict that you have to navigate. Sometimes
Stephanie
it's great.
with Vanishing Seattle is next. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Vanishing Seattle, over the past few years, many of Seattle's communities have experienced unprecedented gentrification and displacement, not only of residents, but longstanding businesses and institutions that support our social fabric and cultures. The development that we're seeing is for the most part producing housing and goods that are out of reach of, and in many cases contributing to the displacement of low-income, working and middle-class families and seniors, immigrants and people of color, artists and creatives and service workers. So basically anybody who's not pulling down a six-figure salary. So many residents feel that what's being created isn't actually meant for us. My question is, as mayor, what steps would you take that are holistic, community-driven, and value cultural preservation to ensure that all of our communities, especially prioritizing those hardest hit by gentrification and displacement, can survive and thrive in Seattle?
Yeah, thank you. And I think that answer, there are many different pieces to dealing with that question. One is that with the housing growth, we have to look at how we absorb that housing growth throughout the city. Because otherwise it's not surprising at all that it's flowed into the central area, which is so close to downtown. So we need to, every neighborhood does need to take on housing growth in some way or another. I just think that's only fair. So I think that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is we have to look at how do we, support the financial empowerment of the people that already live in a place. And that's through things like wages and benefits and secure scheduling. And I've been a supporter of paid sick leave, family medical leave. But I think you have to go another level too, which is how do you support small businesses as well. And one of the things I'd like to do is do an inventory of the city. I mean, like we inventory downtown for historic buildings. Why don't we inventory our communities for their assets so that we can plan for preservation of them as part of the planning that Irene was talking about as we move forward? Because there are trade-offs we make when we do neighborhood planning, and we need to look at that as well. So those are two things I would focus on. I also think we need to create places for entrepreneurship. Like one thing we did was the mobile food trucks, which is, in part, it's cool to have a mobile food truck to eat from. The other part was it's a very low-cost entry for an entrepreneur.
Can we get to?
Sure, you can go to it, but if I can, one sentence, which is, I would love to do something like Pike Place Market in every neighborhood where small entrepreneurs could open stalls and do work. That's something I want to work on.
So I just want to address the fact that gentrification first began here in Seattle when the city pushed out millions of Native Americans from the city. So I want to know how you plan to not only get people of color involved in the development processes in that inventory on the cultural and small businesses, but how do you plan to include the Native community as well?
All right, that is over time, so if you just take a few seconds, please.
I think what you have to do is you have to, I think the answer is yes, we will. And that's what we try to do on things like the Youth and Family Initiative or Safe Communities Initiatives or Road Safety Action Plan. You have to go out and ask people from the community to get involved and hire people from the community to do your outreach so you know that you're reaching people for this community as part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Next is John Lisbon with Seattle Fair Growth.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Good.
Thanks for filling out our survey, which can be found at seattlefairgrowth.com. So now that Bertha has emerged, no, I'm just kidding. I don't want to.
I'd love to talk about that if you want. But
No, I really don't.
Yeah, no.
Deja vu all over again. So many of us have lived here for over, for our whole lives, or for me, 20 years. When I came here, Seattle was rated, I don't know if you remember that Newsweek article, it was the most livable city. Since then, with all the population growth, all the wealth that's coming here, which is great to see, we're also seeing thousands of people without homes. We're seeing the worst traffic in the nation. I live in Ballard. We've seen how that's been kind of run over by poor development or poorly planned development. When you think of livability, when you go to sleep at night, what do you think livability is, and what would you do to maintain our livability in Seattle as mayor?
Sure. So, I came out here in 1989, and I actually remember when I first came across the I-90 bridge and saw downtown, I'd never been to Seattle. That was really special. And was with the woman who became my wife. We have 3 kids. I rented in Wallingford. We then bought a house in Greenwood. I couldn't afford to buy that house now. I could afford to buy it then. And one of the first things in my neighborhood was we didn't have sidewalks. That's why I was going to the neighborhood planning meetings. What does it take to get sidewalks? So I organized our neighbors. We got neighborhood matching fund grants. We got a neighborhood street fund grant. We figured out how to do it. To me, that was like fundamental. Like I should be able to walk to the neighborhood grocery store with my kids and not fear for their lives because cars were going by at 40 miles an hour. So we got a park in the neighborhood. Greenwood Park was purchased. I worked on the subsequent parks levy, 2008 parks levy. I was put together the neighborhood coalition to get it on the ballot over the mayor's objection, invested in it. I've always been a believer in bike lanes, in part because it's about livability for me. I've always supported transit, and we are way, way behind on transit. Because what we know with automobiles is, with this growth, there's just not enough room for all automobiles. We have to use our streets more efficiently, and that means transit. Public safety, it means livability. You should be able to feel safe in your neighborhood, no matter what neighborhood you live in. And if you call the police, you should feel comfortable that you're going to be treated with dignity and respect. So all of these things, I could go on. But these are things that I believe in and things I've tried to work on as both an advocate and as a mayor.
Just a quick question, since you,
14 seconds.
wow,
Go for it.
since you were mayor and the north area still doesn't have sidewalks,
Yes,
I mean, you're in a position
Sure,
to.
and that's absolutely fair, and that's absolutely fair. What I learned was that a mayor has power, but not nearly as much power as you think. And certainly not as much power as you think when you're in the midst of a deep recession, as we were. But if you look at my capital investments, I did do the seawall downtown. We built Rainier Beach Community Center. We redid this roof on this building. We rebuilt city-owned buildings. We renovated Hangar 30. We did Linden Avenue, where there are thousands of seniors. I did everything I could to steer capital away from the big downtown projects and into neighborhoods. And that was my attitude. There was only so much money, only so much time, and a hell of a lot of opposition from the downtown capital.
It's not true, Michael. My with big power.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Toby, you're next and last, thanks.
Hi, Mike. I'm not Bill Bradford, just so you know. Successful urban planning, you're going to say something. Successful urban planning helps target where jobs and housing development occurs while ensuring necessary transportation infrastructure and public amenities to support these, which is called concurrence.
Right.
In the past, we used something called the Urban Village Strategy to accomplish this. Seattle has seen explosive job growth fueled by tax and other incentives provided by the city. Rather than managing growth, we are encouraging unfettered demand on housing and infrastructure and have arguably failed at implementing successful housing and transportation policies because we're doing too little too late to support the job growth. So, Planning Director Sam Acefa has called Mayor Murray, quote, the planner-in-chief. That planning has largely been based on the backroom deal to upzone a bunch of the city called the Grand Bargain to support a little bit of money for public housing and support transit infrastructure to create mass transit to limited areas a long time out. What would you do differently as planner-in-chief to address our growing pains?
Yeah, and I referenced this in my opening statement. I think the first thing we need to do is we need to hold the line on property and sales taxes and regressive taxes, and we need to ask the big corporations to pay for the new initiatives. And I think this gets in part of what you're talking about. I would, if we're going to have an affordable housing plan, that's who we should be looking for to pay for more community-owned and publicly owned housing, which I believe we do need such a plan. If we're going to have more transit, that's what we should be looking at. If we're going to renew the next Bridging the Gap levy, I think it's got a different, Move Seattle is the name now. I think we need to look at more progressive ways to pay for all of those things. That's one piece of it. And the other piece of it is what I brought up earlier, which is you need to engage the community at a neighborhood-based level about what are the investments you want to see to accompany the growth. And again, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. There is always a tension between, the neighborhood specific priorities and the overall city needs and priorities. But I think you have to engage both sides in that dialogue to make it work. And that would be my commitment and how I've tried to operate as an advocate and as a mayor.
Okay, a little follow-up. When you came into office at the beginning of 2010, it was right at the end of a process called the Neighborhood Plan Advisory Committee. Do you remember that?
I don't, yes.
I just took a look for it online. It is disappeared from the city's website.
Not surprised.
Why did you not implement the NPAC recommendations?
We don't have, we would have to dig deep into what those recommendations were for me to answer that and one other time, but I'm happy to follow up with you. Because I'm not sure we did it.
I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Well, that was
Fair
really
enough.
fast. Okay, thank you, Toby, thank you, panelists. Okay, we have, again, a very eager group of questioners over here wanting to ask you some open-ended questions. Nancy, I'm going to ask you to be really strict about time. We can only have 1 minute for your question, and you get, Mike, 2 minutes
Okay,
to answer.
No, 125.
1 minute for your question, and please try to get right to the question, and then we'll know what Mike's supposed to do.
Answer for
Okay,
125.
all of you. All right,
1 minute.
first.
I'll try to
Steve Zemke, I'm on the Seattle Urban Forestry Commission, also Chair of Tree Pack and Friends for Seattle Urban Forest. My question is going to be a tough one, very direct. The question is have you been reborn? And that is reborn on urban forests, protecting the urban forests in the city for 4 years under your administration. No ordinance was passed. In fact, the DPD under your administration basically said we didn't need a stronger tree ordinance. We just needed incentives and education. That's not working. Other cities have much stronger ordinances, including requiring permits to take out trees, notice, and tree replacement. Again, have you been reborn, or are you the same Mike McGinn?
Well, obviously, I think I'm a little older and wiser. I think I'm a little more humble. Being mayor would do that to you. I'd beat up a fair bit. But I will say this. We did, even though it was the recession, we put a lot of money into preserving our green belts. And we kept and maintained the Green Seattle Partnership during that time, which was getting the ivy out of all the green belts. You're right, we did come up with a proposal. And what you're saying is that not good enough and we need to revisit it, and we'd be happy to revisit it and engage with the Urban Forestry Commission again on that question.
Yes, Mike, you remember me.
I do remember you, Mike.
Yeah, my point is, what are you going to do about the American with Disability Act not being enforced, or the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that was amended in 1988, that's not being enforced, and 59.18020, rights and remedies obligation imposed in good faith, that where we are not being treated fairly, Mike McGinn, and I'm going back to 2005, 144 deaths.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
What you gonna do?
You know, Michael, you've shared with me your documents, and I have reviewed them all when you shared them with me. And I appreciate that we have this dialogue, and I know there's more work to be done. So there's a lot of questions in there, and I'm not sure which one you want me to hit, but I do take seriously our relationship.
Another year too.
I take it all seriously.
Yeah, so do I. I like seeing you, Michael.
Look at our veterans sleeping on the streets, Michael.
No, okay,
It's
let's talk.
sickening.
It is sickening. It is sickening. So we'll go right there. We'll go right there. This would be my highest priority coming into office, would just be, when I talked about reviewing the budget and finding dollars, one of the things, let's talk about homelessness for a second. The city is doing things that are moving people out of homelessness. More people are moving into homelessness than are moving out. The problem's growing faster than solutions are being offered. And this is, I know all the candidates are going to come in and say, well, this policy or that policy. We need rapid rehousing, and we need all-day shelters, or we need, more drug treatment, or more mental health treatment. All of those things are right. But if the answer was simply having, the right policy answer, we would have been there earlier. Because, I've been there, and let me share with you how it works. When you go in there to try to get the money over there, everybody else who's got a stake in the budget they're holding their ground. And the council is a little nervous about trying to figure out how to get that, a little nervous about all the donors and all the interests. What will happen if they move that money? And, I had to do it. 67 million in cuts in my first year, and it was hard. But I think we have a crisis that deserves that same type of focus. And what I would want to do is go into the budget, find the money, and that's on the policy, that's on the money side. And on the policy side, let's have some determination to just push through and provide shelter for everyone that needs it. It's going to be challenging. Neighborhoods get concerned about encampments or safe injection sites or new shelters. But what we're doing now with people sleeping on the streets, in our parks, is unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. There should be a safe and secure place for everyone to go at night. And trust me, I'm going to go into that hard, and I'm the only candidate who can do that with the experience of having been in that office before and understanding the obstacles that anybody who gets in there will face. It's not just a policy change.
Yes, Mr. Shard here. What I wanted to say to you is honesty is the best policy. When you speak about policy and you come back again, I don't know if they say third time is a charm, so anyway, my concern is that I have been using the 7th floor for the most part of my life. This time, with this mayor, I don't think I ever came to the 7th floor when you were there, okay? And so that means that that race and social justice thing is not working, okay? And I'm wondering, what are you gonna do in that area? Race and social justice initiative is in place right now with the city of Seattle. And the only reason why I'm up there on Murray's floor right now is because it's not working, okay? So that's, you can answer that. Just take it, you know.
Just go.
Give it with your, hit it with your best shot.
Racism is real. I mean, and I got inside the system a little bit. You know, I got to see how the system works.
Quiet.
And the phrase, and institutional racism is real. And the institution, the reason we call it institutional is because the institutions are strong. It is so deeply embedded. And, you know, I saw it, I went to expand the Seattle Youth Violence Prevention Initiative to 18 to 24-year-olds when I was mayor. Because why would you just say someone's 18, they're ready to move on? And that was blocked by the city council. They said there wasn't enough data. I went to expand Career Bridge. It was a new program that was dealing with felons returning to the community, right? They need the help, right? Like, give somebody housing, start connecting to a job in a community. You know, all of us will be safer. I mean, we can start mending these communities we've torn apart. That was blocked by the city council. Where's the data? Yet at the same time, without any examination whatsoever, the city council was committing us to literally hundreds of millions of dollars for a magnificent new waterfront. You know, so if you want to understand, you know, go into the mayor, spend more time on the 2nd floor. The more you look, the more you'll see. So I think that just every decision we make has to confront the embedded institutional racism in our system. And it's uncomfortable for us to do it, but every decision we make has to be there, and I'll just do my best, and you tell me when I'm messing up, and I'll try to listen.
I'm Dennis Saxman from Capitol Hill. You said you're older and wiser.
I hope so.
Talk is cheap, Mike.
Yeah.
Give me one example where you have opposed recently pro-growth machine in the city on behalf of the neighborhoods, where you have spoken out on behalf of neighborhoods against the growth machine that runs this city for its own profit.
Yeah. Well, you know, one, I don't think you're going to hear any candidate who came out with the tax plan that I just laid out, right? That I am prepared to tax the big successful companies with taxes we already have. I mean, I support an income tax, by the way, and I promoted it in my announcement, and there was a great coalition that had done the work that meant that the city council will push it through. But there's a real question about legality. What I haven't heard any other candidate say yet is, will they support something called the employee hours tax? You don't have to pass a ballot measure, they can pass it right now. Redmond charges $109 for every employee in Redmond, and they do that because they have Microsoft there. We could do that for big corporations, exempt small corporations, and doing something like that would raise probably 30 to 40 million a year. As an example, instead of always turning to sales taxes or property taxes. So that's you gotta understand something, Dennis. I know you feel I'm the pro-growth guy, but, and we know each other. Dennis and I used to do a thing where I'd ask the audience who's ever sued a development in their neighborhood, and Dennis and I were the only ones to raise our hands. You know, that's what I did at the Greenwood Community Council.
Answer the question about development.
Well, I think that if we're taxing them, we can pay for, that's one of the things we can use to pay for affordable housing. And to get to your question on development, and I'll be clear, I support more housing in the city. I do think we need to build more housing. And I think we need to do so for equity reasons. I think we need to do so for environmental reasons. And so, you know, we're in different positions. Dennis and I may be in different positions on that. You and I may be in different positions on that, but I do support it. And I don't want to disguise that. But it's not surprising that the Chamber of Commerce has spent untold amounts of money in both of my campaigns against me. And, you know, and who's the Chamber of Commerce, right? They're the people who are really benefiting from this growth. And the reason they spend money against me is because I don't care how rich they are. You know, I'm prepared to stand up and fight them, and I lose. But I also do believe in more housing. But I believe we have to have a dialogue with communities about how we get there, and involve everyone in that dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tim Motura. I'm a member of the Lake City Neighborhood Alliance Park and Community Center Committee. And Lake City Neighborhood Alliance is sponsoring a petition. Thank you for that. To encourage our existing Park District commissioners, who are 9 elected city council people, to address a major deficit in the current park spending plan dealing with aging park facilities. There's just not enough money. Best example of that, a consultant study was done on community centers. 2 community centers were identified to be replaced. There's no money to replace those centers. We are proposing a solution, and that is to maintain the current assessment for this year at 27.5 cents through the remaining 3 years. If they do that, they'll generate $26 million that can be used to create this dedicated line item to deal with aging park facilities. So the question is, if you become the mayor, would you be willing to work with the current mayor and the current council members to take action now rather than later?
Yeah, I actually, mentioned the privatization of Green Lake, which has been on the table, I think is wrong. We looked at that when we were building Rainier Beach Community Center, that was put on the table by the Parks Department. And when we looked at it, you just can't manage a community center with a private partner, even a good, big nonprofit partner, and still meet our public goals. So we ended up taking that off the table. I think the city should take it off the table. I looked at the long-range plan on maintenance. I believe the number was $67 million when you look at all the unmet maintenance needs in our facilities. That's a number that's within reach for a capital budget. If you can choose priorities, as we mentioned earlier, if you can choose priority, that's a number that's within reach. So whether it takes a continuation, I didn't quite track the continuation of the existing levy or look at that, but I certainly believe that that's within reach and something we can do with existing resources if we prioritize, and we'd be happy to work on that.
Hi, Mike. Sarah Jane Siegfried from Lake City. We've asked all the candidates about livability, and everybody has a different definition, and probably everyone in the city has a different definition. Would you support a citywide process through the neighborhoods of coming up with 5 or 6 actual measurable goals of livability? In other words, the city really needs to agree on what this thing is so we can set out to achieve some of those ends. Would you support that, and would you put that in your plan from now on?
I like that idea. Yeah, one of the things I've spoken about is I would really like to when I talk about talking to communities, I'll just share my thinking about this. I thought it was tremendously disrespectful to end the district councils and in the way they did. I served on the Northwest District Council for years. And we argued there was diversity of opinion. Fake or no didn't want bus lanes on Aurora. I did want bus lanes on Aurora. But I also recognize the district councils aren't necessarily as diverse as we wanted to. And that was true of the district council that I was on, that was true of the community council that I led. I think we need to bring back that type of input, which is ongoing with neighborhood leaders from as many different places as possible, which is staffed from the city, so that you have lines of communication open. I also think we need kind of a broad-based, more intensive process, which brings in as many people as possible over a short period of time. And that's something I'd like to launch when I take office, because I want to have a broad public dialogue about how do we deal with housing growth and how do we identify the investments we need in neighborhoods. So your idea of coming up with a metric around what are we trying to achieve, I think fits within that. So I like the idea.
Hi, my name is Alex Zimmerman, and I candidate for 2017 for mayor, like you, McGinn. So, and you probably listened many times. I call this election rats race. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So my question to you, same what is to everybody, nothing different. I call 6 front running a Nazi pig, and I don't understand why 700,000 emerald degenerate idiot accept this. So my question to you, same like to everybody, who chose from beginning the 6 front running, what is I call a Nazi pig, and why you accept this and not accept another 15 people? Is this a constitution? Is this us right for election? or this exactly corruption, because this will be one from the 6 elected, and nothing will be changed.
Time for the answer.
Repeat my question. Who from beginning did this? Thank you, Mike.
Who from beginning did this?
Exactly, from beginning.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of wish we had the democracy vouchers in the mayor's race, frankly, you know? I mean, we saw one of the candidates get, you know, $250,000 right in the first few weeks, you know?
You're not answering the question.
No, I am answering your question, Alex.
No.
Who did this?
Did this? Who?
Who? Well,
Who?
yeah.
From beginning, 6 front running choice. From beginning,
From
first
beginning,
day.
yeah.
Remember first date when you in April we talked with you. Who? Choice is 6. Who?
Yeah. So
why?
So how it works is that the public, you know, the media decides who are relevant candidates, and their primary metric is money. And when you make that the primary metric, that means that a lot of voices are just, boom, they're not in.
This is
They're
not beginning.
Oh, well, maybe it's not the beginning. Maybe you have to go further back, Alex. But that's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. And every candidate struggles to get taken seriously, and a lot of candidates who deserve to be heard don't get heard. And I'm actually glad at the forums where there are some other voices there, because, you know, you get some new ideas into the mix than when it's just the 6 front runners, which you'll probably experience after listening to all of us. That we tend to say some things the same, and you're all looking for the differences. I tried to identify a few for you, for me. But that's the reality.
Reality of fascism. Yeah, you're right.
Hi, Mike. My name is Ruby Holland. I lived in our family home since 1963 in the CD. How would you help me stay in my home with this Hala invasion, as well as other people in the CD, where displacement's supposed to be high, and as well as people in other neighborhoods who have worked hard, played by the rules, love their homes, and quite frankly have no place else to go? How would you help us stay in our home?
And what is the, if I may, what is the pressure? What is the thing that you feel would force you out, the specific
Well,
things? Is it the taxes or the
I think
zoning?
it's with the tax thing. The
It's with the
taxes will
taxes.
definitely go up. And I've seen areas where these apartments are all over the place, and it is bad, ugly. And it's just not livable. But I think basically the taxes is my concern.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard this from a lot of people as well, and that's one of the reasons. And I wasn't, you know, that wasn't where I was a few years ago. I mean, you know, as mayor, we put out a property tax levy, for example, to fund the, you know, get library hours back. And the parks levy I supported was a property tax levy. But it just feels like we've had one after the other here, and we just have to stop, and we have to have the courage to, as I said, tax the big corporations, or tax the incomes of the wealthy. We can tax the big corporations. We have the authority right now with some of the political will, and we can use that to invest, you know, in neighborhoods and invest in the things that neighborhoods need, I believe. And if an income tax on the wealthy works, then that's that too. And part of the reason I think we need to overline on property taxes is because of the things you're telling me, which is, you know, you may get forced out of the city, and that's not right.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike. Cindy Barker from the Neighborhood Planning and Land Use Committee, still with the CNC.
Okay.
Under your administration, funding to the Department of Neighborhoods and neighborhood planning was cut in larger proportion to the other departments in reaction to the recession. But as a direct result, 13 neighborhoods have still not had their neighborhood plans reviewed and updated, 23 years after they were originally adopted. We think that the MHA discussions might have gone easier if some of those neighborhoods had actually been into their plans and had a chance to recast their future. So what will your administration do to rectify that?
Yeah. So, and this gets to some of the things we were saying earlier. It is true that during the recession we had to make cuts, and the cuts were to, you know, we did make cuts to the number of neighborhood representatives and to DON. We had really, really hard choices, and I hope people appreciate that. We also, as I said, we had done full neighborhood plans in Rainier Beach and up in the, you know, Broadview, Bitter Lake neighborhoods. And the length of time and the costs associated with us said that let's focus. What we tried to do then was, you know, like we started a Ballard urban framework, we did a U-District urban framework. We tried to go in and have a dialogue that was a bottom-up dialogue that was more in hot spots, because I just didn't know how we could afford all 13 then. I think it's time to revisit how we have a broad dialogue, that revisits those questions about what is it that you really want in each neighborhood. Again, I go back to where we were when I first got involved, and I agree with you, it's been too long, and people feel like they aren't being heard, and that's what I was trying to say to Sarah Jane as well. How do we launch an inclusive way to hear from people in neighborhoods?
What are you going to propose to do that? And it's something that doesn't take more than 2 full next terms. 23 years, some of those plans have been sitting there, and they are clearly outdated.
Well, I think we need to figure out, that's the challenge, is how do you go into a community and update that plan without making each one a 1 or 2 year process? And that's what I want to figure out. I want to figure that out.
Figure that out on your campaign statement, not after you get in office.
Well, sometimes it's nice to talk to people and ask people. I mean, I want to be really clear about this. I mean, I know these races are run if everybody comes in and what's your answer to every question?
Let's go back to the impact recommendations that you don't.
Yeah, no, but I mean, seriously, we can come in, I can come in here, and I know all the candidates come in here and say they have every answer that's like kind of what campaigns do to people. That's not actually how, I know, but that's not actually how governance works. Because when you get into office, if you think you have all the answers, you're going to make mistakes. If you're willing to come, let me finish my sentence. If you're going to come in, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, how do we update it? I think you want a say in that, and you're going to have a say in that.
But I am playing off of, you said that you said you'd learned lessons. And this is a lesson I thought you would have learned on and reflected, and I thought that was a softball question.
I want to update those plans, but I know from reality that if we update them the old way we did it, it's not going to work. So we have to have a conversation about how we do it effectively and efficiently, and that will take a little work, and I want to come up with that answer with you, not me dictating from the top. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
My name is Pat Griffith, and I'm going to change the subject to education, and I live on Queen Anne, incidentally. This current administration seems to be wanting to seize more control of education, and I'd like to know your thoughts on the relationship between the school board, which is a legal authority, and the city, and how the city and the school board can work together more productively. And I'm speaking a little bit of my own neighborhood, where we have a 58-unit townhouse complex coming into the Seattle Seattle Children's Home. There is not 1 unit of affordable housing, and by approving that, we're pushing out kids to be bused to other neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat the last part of your question?
I was just giving an example.
Of the no affordable housing, and where was that?
Right, this is on the Seattle Children's campus, and when it was proposed 2 years ago, it was, the bottom price was $650,000, and we're going to be going through construction hell for the neighborhood for the next 2 years.
When I ran the first time, I talked about governance, and one of the things I learned from the process was that it's not the mayor's job to talk about how the school district should be governed. If the public wants to change, they're going to have to bring that up. It shouldn't be coming from the mayor's office. I do think that the city can partner, and we work to partner. When I was in office, like I mentioned earlier, the Youth and Family Initiative, we ended up hiring people from different communities, ethnic communities. We hired translators. We brought over 3,000 people into that process to tell us, and we asked one question: what do you need for your kids to succeed? And parents know that answer, so we weren't trying to dictate from the top, this is what we need to do to make schools better. And I think a lot of that goes on right now in the school system. There's a lot of better off interests that, we have the answer to schools, we get the mayor to leverage that out of the school district by how we manage the money. And I prefer a bottom-up system, and what we got out of that was we got recommendations that we wouldn't have come up with. We opened health centers in all the high schools and in the middle schools. In many of the middle schools, we got a visiting dentist program. We heard from people about things that were outside of school, so we did more work on the summer lunch programs and things like that. We did an attendance campaign to help encourage kids to get into school. I think there's a vast array of things you can do if you listen to the public and if you partner with the school district. The city is involved in so many different things that affects the health of children and families that you just need to figure out how to partner on each one and effectively manage your resources to do that.
Hi, my name is Matt Atkins. I live in Queen Anne. And you talked before about top-down decision-making. Earlier this year, Mayor Ed Berry tried to put together a property tax in the city. And I believe there were 0 discussions, 0 public meetings about it until the program was scuttled in favor of hopefully something next year. I think homelessness is one of the most important issues in our city, but there's not a lot of people to talk about it with. In neighborhoods, people are, it's not just people that are for it or against it, but people that have questions, people that would like to talk more about it, understand it more, see how neighborhoods can help out homelessness, in the homelessness crisis. And I was wondering, if you're elected mayor, would you be willing to go into neighborhoods and not just talk about a specific shelter or encampment or anything, but really sit down with people, listen to their concerns and thoughts and ideas, and talk with them about it? And could you give some examples of how you would do this?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. You actually raise a really good point, because I need to think about how we have a public dialogue about an aggressive homelessness response if it's going to succeed. Because I think we need to have a public dialogue about it. Because people do have very different opinions about what the right answers are, and people need to be heard. You know, I'm really comfortable, and I did it as mayor. I think I held like 100 town halls, a lot of them where I just did what we're doing right here. Yeah, and Alex showed up at almost every one. I think he gave the first question on almost every one. And I just showed up and I took the questions. The other thing was I brought department heads with me to listen. And some of them were along the lines of the Youth and Family Initiative, where we really put resources into making sure we were getting very diverse representation. And then that would lead to further dialogue, like we did one we called Safe Communities, in which we did that with police departments. Other times it was just, the people who showed up, like today. I'll just show up and talk to the people who show up and take questions. So that would be it. But I think you asked a deeper question, which was, how do you, or I heard a deeper question, which is how do we structure a public dialogue so that there's greater public acceptance of whatever the policy answers we come up with around homelessness.
Homelessness costs us every year $300 million, guys. $300 million per year. Yes, sir.
I appreciate that you support town hall style meetings, because this administration does not like town hall style meetings. They have done absolutely everything that they can to cut the voice of the neighborhoods, the individuals that live in the neighborhoods. It is absolutely unacceptable, and we need a real shake-up downtown. And so one other thing that I've thought long and hard about this, and I've been very active in my neighborhood, and we just had news that our property taxes, due to what the state just passed for education, would predict another $400 of regressive property taxes. The HOLA plan is outdated. In the almost 2 years since they started, they haven't even been flexible on hardly any of the policies. I mean, the parking in the neighborhoods, they won't listen, we're just cut out of the dialogue. And in retrospect, as you review HOLA, we find the flaws: no infrastructure, no neighborhood voices, a lot of affordable housing that is not built within the site. If they hand it to the housing authority, it gets built down the road, takes longer, etc. Could be more expensive too. So we need a shakeup. Thank you. And my question is, do you agree with me?
When I did town halls, I would say you don't have to ask a question. If you just want to tell me something, so I can hear you, that's cool. And I hated town halls when I first started doing them, because it's really hard to get challenged and not feel like you have the answers, and you don't always have all the answers. And over time, I grew to really like them, because I really like getting out of City Hall and, kind of the consultant and lobbyist and, political class. I like hearing, I far prefer going out and talking to people. I will say, though, that, and one of the reasons I liked them was because oftentimes the discussion in the room would reveal that there were differences within the community itself. One of the lessons I learned, for example, in Lake City, I had inadvertently, we opened up Fire Station 39 in Lake City as a homeless shelter. And yeah, there were people that really supported that, but there were also a lot of people in the neighborhood that felt like, man, you just did that without even talking to us. And inadvertently, we're contributing to division within the community. We ended up launching, like a year later, finally, it got through my thick head what we were doing that was wrong, even though we were trying to help the homeless. And we started a Lake City planning process that brought all these folks together to start talking about what they needed. So I guess the point I'm saying is that discussion might bring in voices that disagree with you and disagree with me and disagree with others, but it's always a more productive discussion than when it feels like it's top down. So that's what I would try to do.
So open Bertha room every week. It's very simple.
Hi, Mike. Jan Rucker from the Lincoln Springs neighborhood. I have a question to you about preserving existing multifamily housing, such as shuttered motels. How can we activate the spaces that are already there as the shortest possible fix?
Yeah, and this goes to the question about how does the city get deeper into the publicly owned housing space and realm than we are. Right? I mean, if you look at some European cities, like big percentages of the housing are actually owned by the city, and you can rent control that, right? Because you own it. And but it takes a lot of resources to do it. So one of the things I would like to do is work to put together a plan of, if we were going to go there, one, how do we pay for it? And as I said, I think we have some resources to start doing that. And then how do you implement? People talk a lot about we have city land that's available. We probably have some, but maybe not as much as we want. But could we just use eminent domain to buy, properties and start running them ourselves? I think that's something that definitely should be on the table.
Yeah,
if we have the resources. Yeah, right. And the housing levy kind of is, divided up certain ways. But let's get just deeper into it. And it doesn't always have to be very low income housing too. Like if we can start owning and running housing that the rents would help pay for a fair bit of the cost, supplemented by tax funds on the companies that are doing so well, maybe there's a pathway for us to really expand. It would take time, but I think now's the time to start. And trying to buy properties that are available or that are currently affordable, that could be maintained that way into the future. I think that's something that type of resource would be great for.
Asking for myself.
Go ahead.
It's August 4th. The primary is over.
Yeah.
Nikita Oliver and Jenny Durkin get through the primary. John Grant and Teresa Mosqueda get through the primary. Are you going to endorse anybody?
Oh, I think I've answered this question already. I would definitely, I don't want to sound mean or anything, but we see who's running this city. I support anyone against Jenny Durkin.
Because it's no different, Mike.
I really would. I really would.
And
actually, I have I have a ton of respect for Nikita. Let's just be very clear about that. First, as an individual, but the other thing is, 4 or 8 years ago, we wouldn't have had that type of voice in a mayor's race. It shows how much politics is moving in the city, and regardless of what happens in the primary, the values she represents, the people she's representing, need to be heard moving forward. Period. And I know they will be, and maybe it's through Nikita, maybe it'll be through other leaders, but things have changed. Things have been changing over the last 8 years since I first took office. And this is one of the areas that has changed, and that needs to be a part of the debate, win or lose.
Well, thank you very much for that. How about position 8?
Oh, I'm sorry. I go both ways on that one, to be honest with you. I like both of them. I supported John in the last election. I met Teresa, and I like Teresa quite a bit too. So I don't know if I'd weigh in on that one in the general. And certainly if I was in it, I'm not weighing in on any city council race, because I don't need to have council members if I win.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah, that's fine. That's fine, John.
Yeah, we got a 2-minute close.
Okay.
So go for it.
Okay. You can shorten my close if you want. That property, I mentioned that property tax was one of the things that just got me involved, right? It was like it just came right without any public input whatsoever. You know, they weren't even going to go to council. Like, that was one of the things that really got me, like, getting involved, like, really thinking about getting in. And I'd been thinking about it for a few months before that. One of the things, and it was that mismanagement that drove me. And you know what drove me when I first ran for office was I didn't feel like neighbors were being listened to. I didn't think anybody was taking climate seriously, you know, and I still believe that. Then I got into office, and I realized that the way I felt as a neighborhood person and as an environmental advocate was the way that low-income service workers felt. It was the way communities of colors felt. It was the way immigrant and refugees felt. Like they were not being listened to. And I worked hard to develop a coalition that was composed of those folks. And I ran into some pretty significant institutional power. And I am older, I'm wiser, I've learned a few lessons. I think I'm a little mellower, you know, about the whole thing. I've gotten into this race. This city is so divided. There's so much tension and anger in this city, far more than I felt in 09 or 13. And that really troubles me, right? Because I love this city. You know, I've really dedicated myself to it. And I've raised my kids here. You know, they're Seattleites, and are they going to live here in the future? And the job of a mayor is to try to figure out a path forward. I want to tell you, path forward is not, you know, saying, you know, if we feel like the city's being run for the wealthy, let's not keep doing it that way. Let's not keep putting them in charge. Let's figure out how we start working collectively together across income, across race, across neighborhood, and what we really believe the city ought to be. That's why I'm motivated to get in. I still believe it's
If you want me to go ahead and finish timing the next one, I can.
Okay, folks, don't go too far. Bob Hasagawa has just entered the building, and I'm going to go get him in approximately 1 minute. So we'll be ready to start our next questioning period very shortly.
You can't